if you look just at the reactions and the talking points post game, way too much on referee decisions, way too much on officiating.
You know, when you need something from a player, she was always the one who stepped up and took the lead and took her team by the scruff of the neck and took them forward, and it was just remarkable.
Scrum is almost as ridiculous as the thing in your hair. Is that going to be what we talk about between now and 2027? Hello and welcome to the Players Podcast, brought to you by International Rugby Players Association. My name is Owen and it's the last podcast of the year. So along with IRPA's Chief of Rugby Operations Conrad Smith and Head of Women's Rugby Rachel Burford, we're going to look back at the year that was 2025. Women's Rugby World Cup, Sevens, Nations Championship, R360, 20-minute red cards, player load guidelines and some great rugby along the way. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get stuck in. Conrad, where do we start? What kind of year was 2025? How will it be remembered from a rugby point of view?
I'd like to think it was a great year. I think, I think straight away the Women's World Cup, like that was the pinnacle event. It captured the imaginations of everyone. I'm sure Rachel speak to that. And then, Sevens, we went through some troubles. I think we've started, we sort of reshaped the game again. I started with some more changes to format, but the Sevens rugby itself is continuing to produce a lot of great rugby and men's 15s. As competitive as ever, I think you've seen the emergence of an immensely powerful South African team who are dominating, the game as much as any men's team in sort of recent memory. But outside of them, like the men's competition in the 15s, incredible. So leading into that World Cup, it's going to be very exciting.
Rachel, it was an amazing year for the women's game because of the Rugby World Cup, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, certainly. I think, as Conrad said, it really did capture the hearts and minds and the imagination, I think. But it wasn't just the Rugby World Cup. It was the entire year just had so much growth, whether that was regional competition, the test matches leading into the Rugby World Cup, the announcement of the British and Irish Lions. There was so much positivity this year around the women's game. I think the biggest challenge is how do you keep that momentum going forward?
Yeah, and that's going to be something that will be a big talking point in 2026. Conrad, going back to the South Africans just for a moment, their scrum is almost as ridiculous as the thing in your hair. Is that going to be what we talk about between now and 2027?
I hope not. They might not. Yeah, they might start scrumming with this type of headpiece
Give
to
them
combat them. I don't know. I mean, I was going to say, like, when you sort of think back to rugby, unfortunately, it feels like rugby's still grappling with the way we referee the game. The competition, particularly in November, again, unfortunately, there's a lot of good rugby on the park, but if you look just at the reactions and the talking points post game, way too much on referee decisions, way too much on officiating. So the good part is that the game itself is actually quite encouraging. The try scored, the points scored across competitions, even outside of internationals, is way up on previous years. So, but there's a lot of good stuff. I think if we can tidy that up, I know there's work being done behind the scenes. It needs to be better. That's hopefully the focus. And then in 2 years' time, we're talking purely about great rugby, great teams, great players, and no asterisks next to that because we have to talk about match officials.
Because there was an awful lot of positive, especially as we did the try the year every year. It was probably the best year we've had for scintillating tries scored across the men's and women's game. But unfortunately, especially November was blighted by not just bad decision making, but referees trying to get control of a game that is, it's harder and harder to referee. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, we had Brendan on a couple of weeks ago and he talked, through a number of those areas that it's such a challenging position and we've got to get the balance right. So do we want everything right in the game? Do we want the best flow in the game? and those kind of things. And as Conrad said, we're seeing incredible products throughout men's and women's, the tries, the ball in play. We're seeing everything improve, and we've got to make sure that the match officiating is also consistent with that as well. But unfortunately, sometimes the referees are in a position where it can't help what they are doing on the field, to whether they've got to talk too much, they've got TMO interventions. So it's a real challenge. And, you talk to a lot of people and nobody wants to put their hand up to be a referee because they recognise just how difficult that job is.
I think that's important. Like, it's not the individuals or the referees. Like, it's the direction the game is giving them. That's where the fault lies.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to work out. Like, the people that are doing the job in the middle are as good as we've ever had in the game. They're better resourced, they're better trained, they're the best we've ever had. But it's the direction that we're giving them isn't clear enough. The clarity's not there, the alignment's not there amongst all the stakeholders, and that's what we need to work out.
And just finally on that point, we have Shape of the Game coming up in the early part of next year. This has to be the top priority, the top talking point for that conference. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah. And as I sort of said before, there is work being done in the background. Everyone recognises this issue. I think a lot of people who are criticising or, laying the blame are probably now thinking, well, what can we actually do about it? Whether that's a CEO, a coach, the player representatives, we actually need to do better ourselves, come together. The Shape of the Game provides that opportunity. We've got to make the most of that and do as best we can so that, hopefully the game, it's obviously not all going to be done on that 1 or 2 days, but over that period of time, we sort of leave and approach the next year with a really clear idea as to what the game is that we want to be seen and what the role of the match official is within that.
Hey, Rach, we get to talk about on-field stuff now, which is the fun part, really. We don't do it too much on this podcast, and maybe we should do more of it. Let's talk about the Women's Rugby World Cup. Let's talk about the Women's Player of the Year, Sophie De Goede from Canada, the inspirational captain. The right decision?
Yeah, look, I think Sophie had such a hard lead into the Rugby World Cup. For those who don't know, she did her ACL just before the Olympic Games, literally the week before that she was selected for, and then she was on this real hard road to recovery. As we all know, that ACL's a horrible injury for any player to go through, and the timing of it for her to come back and be as if she never left the game was unbelievable. She plays in second row, back row, but she can play like an outside back. She can play like a centre. She really does have all the tools in the box, and she's also the goalkeeper for Canada. But she just, when you need something from a player, she was always the one who stepped up and took the lead and took her team by the scruff of the neck and took them forward. And it was just remarkable. On the back of the little rugby that she had played, for her to make such an impact, to be recognised as World Player of the Year is remarkable.
Who else came close?
For me, Meg Jones was a really good close call as well. She was also nominated. I think, again, for those who don't know, went through incredible adversity and hardship last year, losing her mum and dad, and went for a serious injury herself. And for her to channel all that challenging off-field stuff and personal injury and channel that into the way that she played and turned up. And she's just an absolute maverick, a magical player to watch, a ball of energy. And again, was a leading leader for the Red Roses. And I thought she had an outstanding Rugby World Cup. And, she continues to get better. She's had so many serious injuries ever since she was an 18-year-old. That's why I've got a few more caps than I did, because she kept getting injured. But yeah, she was just always getting better and always a player that you'd have first on your team sheet.
Absolutely. And what a story. Conrad, Men's Player of the Year, Malcolm Marx. Are you a fan? Are you a Marxist?
Am I a fan? Well, put that. Do I think he's an incredible player, a beast of a player? Absolutely. He is phenomenal. Am I a fan of, do I like the thought of playing against him? Not at all. So, well, that probably counts for him. He's, and he typifies that team at the moment, just physicality, but incredibly good at what he does. almost immovable when he gets over the ball, leads a scrum that is dominating the world, leads a forward pack, that's dominating the world. And within that South African team, like, the amazing thing is, like, he doesn't or ever play 80 minutes. And so they have a lot of guys like Sia that will go off, but it's the impact that they have while on the field, and then they'll roll on, other players that do that. Like, they don't rely actually on individuals. Like, they have amazing individuals, but they're putting in 50 minutes, 60 minutes. Someone else comes on, does that again, and they keep an intensity that you can't live with. And we've seen it all year from them. That performance against the All Blacks, it stuck a dagger in my heart. But, in Wellington, in New Zealand, absolutely dominate an All Black team the way they did. I like to say I haven't seen it often, but yeah, and I don't think I've ever seen it in the manner in which they did. And he's been there all through. You could pick a number of players from that South African team, but he's probably the best at the minute.
That was going to be my next question. Who else came close? I suppose you could pick so many from the Springboks. It was only BLBRE from France who kind of came close to the Springbok stars.
Correct. Yeah, and I mean he was amazing. There's a lot of great rugby being played. Other teams can throw up individuals, but I think when looking at a team as dominant as the Springboks are, you really had to pick from that team. And I know we talked before, and Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu. What a talent! Like he has been the one, I think, within that South African team that has looked like it's just an individual that could win games by himself. Like I talked about the others, they all sort of play their part, but he's been something else, and that's saying something because there are players across that squad who have impressed throughout the year. But they definitely deserve having being the team of the year, players of the year coming from that squad. That's how dominant they've been.
Rachel, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about the women's Lions, but looking back on the men's tour from earlier this year, how will it be remembered?
Yeah, I guess from it being, British, I definitely would have felt that was a victory that we probably expected. And I think the way that Australia fans turned out, the way that their tour was run, and the way that the games turned out as well was just phenomenal. It felt like all of a sudden rugby went to another level that we just didn't expect. So as a fan, it was completely immersing because I think, we thought, well, because on the back of how Australia had been performing, everybody kind of had said, well, this is going to be a whitewash, it's going to be or a red wash. But then for that opening game it was Australia that scored. No, we scored really early, didn't we? And then all of a sudden everyone kind of thought, right, well, we knew this was going to be the way, but for it to end the way that it did. And I think I just want to call out like Tag Burn from that series. He was unbelievable. Had a lot of criticism about him, had a lot of question marks about him, but he was just unreal. Along with Mario Toji as well. But I think it was an incredible tour. And there was that storm as well, wasn't there? Where there was the lightning show. So much happened. So much happened in that, where you saw the players chilling. Was it Finn Russell on his phone on the beanbag? 25 minutes into a game or whatever it was. No, it was absolutely class. And you really felt, that Lions-esque being here in England when it was being played over in Australia.
Is it still a tour, Conrad, that, New Zealanders will look forward to hosting next?
Absolutely. I think, one of the highlights, in terms of the piece of the news, certainly in this part of the world, was the announcement of the greatest rivalry, as it's been termed, but New Zealand touring South Africa, and the response that has received overwhelmingly positive. It's not easy to fit these sort of events into the rugby calendar, but at the same time, I think that recognises the uniqueness of touring within rugby, something that's really special. Lions is absolutely, that's sort of the foundation of that. That's the longest touring part of the calendar in terms of a huge history. So when that comes to New Zealand, that's going to be absolutely massive. And like Rach said around, the Australians, actually the way they lifted, I actually think that costed them, that cost them by the end of the year. Like I saw an Australian team that was just struggling. You know, they had a tough tour because they had actually peaked right earlier on, which again, this part of the world, you sort of do it the other way around. You sort of, you know, you use your selections early on and then sort of build through a rugby championship, and then you try and finish with a strong tour. But that Australian team, they were that determined to make put on a strong show in the Lions series, which they did. But it meant it was a long year for those guys, and they'll be enjoying the rest of the moment, that's for sure.
Let's have a look at some of the tries of the year, the International Rugby Players Association try of the year. First up was the women's, all of them coming from the Rugby World Cup, Rachel, which kind of just goes to show what a tournament it was.
Yeah, no surprises that they all came out of the World Cup. You've got every single team participating in best form, in best shape, and we really did see the pictures light up. Like whatever team it was, there was incredible scores. I think we talked about this last time, but just the level of ability across like 1 to 15, whatever the number is on your back, like so many players have had a hand in something, and this was just a little bit of Ellie wouldn't call it magic, he would have called it precision. He wanted to knee it like that and tip it up, and then, you know, Bessie on the inside. But like this was the opening game, and what a try to kind of set off the World Cup is remarkable.
Continue to add to this handsome scoreline.
And this is what I talked about, like in terms of that handling ability, playing really close to the line, the interchanges between forwards and backs. And what I love about it, like particularly these two tries, they're both out of the 22, the ambition and the belief just to play from anywhere, not to think, right, we're camped in our own 22, let's kick it long, let's apply kick pressure and try and turn that on the opposition. They see an opportunity, they see a bit of space, and they back themselves.
The try from Maya Joseph, of course, was the overall winner. But the skill set from the last World Cup, which obviously wasn't that long ago, has come on immeasurably, hasn't it?
I think the teamwork, I think we've spoken before, like that was to me, again, judging a lot of these competitions over the years, it felt like, correct me if I'm wrong, Rach, but often the nominees in previous years, it's just been individual brilliance, and it was almost like one of the players were just too good for the rest of the opposition, and maybe, you know, the defence wasn't up to scratch. But this time round, it was teamwork. It was a whole, you know, 10 players and a couple of them touches of the ball, so you can tell, just to your point, Owen, that the skill level across the board has lifted dramatically. And that's why you're seeing these team tries now. You're still getting the flashes of individual magic, which is great. Like, the sport needs those as well. But actually seeing the team tries, that's been the real development in the game, and speaks to the quality of the skills now that we see every week.
You see Italy scoring here, Rachel. I mean, that was another thing. It wasn't just New Zealand and England scoring all the top tries.
No, and I think, you know, you've got to credit a lot of the investment that's gone into the international game, whether that be your Six Nations, your Pac 4, your regional competition. You know, creating more playing opportunities for players, that is what makes you better. The more you play, then the better you're going to get. The instincts that you're going to have, being able to read one another. Like, you know, Comrade said today, you know, there's 10 players that are involved in it. It's because they're reading each other, they've had time together. And we saw it, thankfully, come alive at the Rugby World Cup.
Speaking about Lions, Santiago Cordero.
He's regathered it.
Yeah, this was, you know, again, some amazing tries scored, amazing nominations. Argentina, what did they end up with? 2 nominations? They could have had more. They were a team. Like, they were made, like, some of their play this year has been amazing. And the tracking of Argentina in general, like their men's team has consistently improved. You look back 5 years, like they took off, they claimed another massive scalps this year for the Argentinian side, and often that's reflected in these tries of the year. That seems silly and it shouldn't follow, but it's crazy how often it does. The teams that are playing well score amazing tries, and you see them nominated. So, and here, you know, this is one of the highlights of the All Black season. I don't want to be harsh, but like they did play extremely well in this game against a French. It wasn't their best side, but they came down here with a bit of a development side, and there was some good rugby played and some great tries. So yeah, seeing them on display, it shows the good things about our game.
That is a great try.
Would you still throwing it around?
Well,
Yeah.
and it's
I mean, you've
ironic,
always been
men's and
expect
women's.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been fortunate to go to the Fiji Islands now, and just the way that they play with the ball, throwing it around. Well, sometimes it's not even a ball, but it's just they come alive, don't they, in attack? And we talked a little bit about individuals, and this is partly an individual try, just the ability to move, but then the support, the big ball over the top. Like, it's always great watching Fiji play. And like Argentina, I mean, tracking what they're doing and the way that they're developing and building, it's leading into 2027 with them as a real prospect of a team to compete.
Speaking of 2027, Chile will be there, and they were the try of the year this year. Santiago Pedrero.
It's a 7-point match.
Epic try, and how good seeing I think Rachel in the women's game, some of these developing or performance unions as we call them, like scoring tries like this. This is showing the way, this is a global game that we play, and even teams that you don't traditionally think of as rugby playing nations are not only playing but scoring tries that are winning the top awards or being nominated. So this is a great reward, and they are a team. We've talked about a few, but Chile, they keep tracking forward, and South American rugby in general is promoting more and more teams now. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see. It'll be great for the next, the Men's World Cup where they'll be involved.
That just leads on to another question then, Conrad. The next Men's World Cup will be a 24-team World Cup. How is it going to be for those new teams coming in? Like, is it an exciting challenge, or is it, there's some people out there who would say it's going to be very tough for those teams?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I mean, you see it across sports. You're trying to expand the game, so you want to offer this opportunity to more and more teams, so they have that pathway. But you don't. I think everyone accepts you can't open it too wide, because then that you question the integrity of the competition. You don't want big lopsided results. Are we going to have some at the next World Cup? Probably, but are those teams at a level where they should be there? I think they are, and we've talked about the Nations Championship and the Nations Cup, which has just been announced. That will benefit those teams. So all of those teams will have a lot more, I think, international rugby than even if you go back to 1987, where some of the teams going in there, they were getting put together a month before the World Cup. So I think it's opportune time. It's the right time to expand it. And I think while some of those teams aren't going to be there at the knockout stages, that they still deserve their right to be at the pinnacle event. And I think they'll produce rugby that shows that to the people that watch.
Okay. We're coming towards the end of the show, coming towards the end of the year, of course. Rachel, what was from a professional point of view with IRPA, what was your kind of highs and lows as you look back on 2025, especially from your point of view as head of women's rugby here?
I think it's an interesting question, because it's quite hard in the year that we've had in women's rugby to find like a real low. Like I said, I think the incredible spectacle that we've had across the year in women's rugby is surpassed anything we've ever, it captured everyone's imagination, not just fans, about what was being done. It captured imaginations everywhere. And so it's real hard to try and find a low. And I think one of the biggest positives, and it leads on to the point around, I said, what's the next biggest challenge? And it's about how do we grow and how do we keep hold of all the momentum that's been generated this year. And one of the big pieces of work that we've been working on for a couple of years now is around the women's global calendar and what that's going to look like, and having a schedule that, as Conrad was talking about Chile being involved, we've also got to improve the performance gap between the unions at the next Rugby World Cup in the women's game. And the global calendar provides those opportunities for teams to play competitively against, levels of union that's right to them on a next 3-year cycle leading into that Rugby World Cup. And it's been a challenging piece of work, but it's been a real rewarding one. That we really look forward to it launching in 2026.
Rad, same question to you. You're the ERPA Chief of Rugby Operations. A lot on your plate. What were the highs and lows for you?
I think, within the work we do, getting the player load guidelines signed off on and approved, that was the culmination of 3 or 4 years of perhaps longer of work. And look, this isn't going to be groundbreaking and maybe like the players in terms of their season next year or the way the game is managed, but I do think it will have a lasting effect, and it's more a signal to the game, I think, as to how we look after our players. It'll be a step along the way to understanding load, more generally, and how we best manage welfare, and that's not always just looking at concussions and head acceleration events, but games that you play across a year, trainings that you play, and I would love and really, desire to see our sport, our game, taking that seriously. So when we talk about player welfare, we think of how we manage our players through a year, what sort of time off that they are given, how we look after them individually, and having a plan for each and every one of them, so that when it gets to the game, they can go out and just express themselves, not worry about, know that they're getting looked after when they step off the field, when they go and play. It's a physical game. Go enjoy it, make tackles, run into tackles, run hard, do all that. And that's what I think, will be a big part of even our work going forward. I think that was a high on the field. Rach just mentioned the Women's Rugby World Cup. Equally, I don't think of lows too often. Perhaps, what we talked about before, just seeing the game still grapple with how we are officiating, and having just the commentary or the post-match commentary and the oxygen almost sucked up by match officiating, rules of the game. I'd love to see us do better, and so we've talked about that already, and I actually think the guidelines is all part of that. Like, we just got to be clear on the game. Okay, we want our game to be safe. There are ways we can do that. And there are ways we can just leave the game alone, and the product on the field's really good. Let guys and girls do their thing on the field, and let's look after them off the field. And that would be my Christmas wish, that we keep going along that path and get a bit of agreement as to how we do that.
Well, on that cheery note, my thanks to Conrad and Rachel for their podcasting efforts since we got the Players Podcast up and running in the last few months. And to you for listening. Hope you're enjoying and learning a bit about what ERPA does. We'll be back soon with the next episode in 2026. And in the meantime, check us out on social media. Hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out. And there's always more information on rugbyplayers.org. So that's it for now. Have a happy new year. And we'll talk to you in 2026.